Thank you for tuning into Healantra podcast. Get ready for a dose of holistic wellness talks to help you achieve optimal health. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to another enlightening episode of Healantra, where we explore stories of resilience, inspiration, and the transformative power of holistic wellness. Today, we have a remarkable guest joining us also from Dubai. She's a dedicated mother of two and a seasoned professional in the field of early years childcare with over 18 years of experience. Her mission has always been to create safe, nurturing spaces where children can learn and thrive. In her personal journey, she faced a health challenge that began at age 15. Enduring severe menstruation pains. It wasn't until she turned 24 that she received a diagnosis of endometriosis, a condition that can often go unnoticed, but certainly can be very debilitating. What makes her story truly remarkable is the path she chose. Despite the physical, mental, and emotional hurdles, she welcomed two beautiful children into her life through natural conception. Today, we're truly honored to have her here to share her journey of strength, hope, and resilience, and to shed light on how she managed her condition through the power of holistic wellness. So let's extend a warm welcome to Latoya Donalds as we dive into her story and how she managed her condition through holistic approach. Thank you so much for being with us today, Latoya.
Oh, thank you for having me, and what a lovely introduction. So thank you.
You're very welcome. So just to start, can you please explain to us the condition of endometriosis in your own personal journey, how you came to understand it? Because personally, before we had spoken about it, you and I didn't have much information really on the subject because I never faced it myself or had anyone around me or in my close circle face that condition. But if you can explain that, please, to us.
Yeah. So endometriosis is it's actually a chronic condition which people don't realize. So it's something that you will have for a lifetime. It's not something that could ever be cured. It's to do with the lining of the womb. So every time you have a menstrual period, there's this excess of blood that happens, and it kind of disperses and detaches itself to different parts within your body. And that's where the problem comes. It can create traction, your organs can stick together, or restrictions. So this is over a longer period of time, but as time goes on and each time you have a period, it creates a bigger effect within your body.
And I was doing a little bit of research myself. So apart from that, there is no known way to prevent it. There's no cure for it, like you said. And the symptoms that you mentioned were severe pain. Is that how you started to realize that there was something not normal with your menstruation? Can you tell us about your symptoms and why did it take so long for you to be diagnosed with it?
Yeah, so my symptoms initially was severe cramp period pain. So I'd have severe cramp where I was bedbound from the age of 15, and I'd have to miss days of school. It was more the heavy flow, clotting from very early before. So these were the visible symptoms that were happening. I think looking back on it now, the problem why it took so long to get diagnosed is one, I was going to the wrong doctor. So unless you are medically trained in this field, you will never identify it on a scan. Because as you know, on a scan, everything's by shadow, by coloring and things like that. So only a trained person was able to identify it. Secondly, it was new back then, so it wasn't a common thing. It's only recently been diagnosed as a chronic disease, as before it was still just a form of bad menstrual cycle, bad period, as they would say.
And when you actually got diagnosed, how did it happen? what kind of doctor did you go to? What made you maybe go look for an alternative to what you've already known for so many years to be normal for you, period pain? What made you at that time actually seek a different kind of advice?
I think it was when I was considering now I'm going to have a child, because before then I was prescribed many different medications to control the pain, and it was just labeled as a bad period. So I always just assumed I had the worst of the of a bad period each month, and I just accepted it. But when I wanted to have a child, and then it was becoming a little bit more difficult, and I was having a couple of miscarriages. So after a couple of miscarriages, it was then okay. I was then referred to go and see a gynecologist rather than just a normal doctor or a GP. Up until that point, I had never been referred beyond a normal doctor or a GP. And then when I went to a gynecologist, luckily for me, that person had experience and had been trained in endometriosis. So once I'd seen them, that's when I was finally diagnosed, and they identified that this is the cause.
During the research I did, I also read that in some cases, this condition can create problems in fertility. So how did you approach this particular part of your life? Because you said you had those miscarriages. And did the doctor say it was because of this condition? And how did you start managing it? Did you have a plan with your doctor?
Yeah, so with my doctor, at this point, I still hadn't fully changed my diet. So at this point, with my doctor, he was just more, let's have an operation. We need to clean up what's going on. One of my tubes was blocked, and let's clean and through keyhole surgery, and let's start again. So let's clean the pathway and start again. I had a scan and checked that I had eggs. So this is the first time as well. So it was like, let's eliminate that. So I was able to see that I had plenty of eggs for the right age. So that was never an issue. And then once I had my operation, it was a case of just keep trying and see what happens. And at that point, luckily enough, it did for me. And this was without me changing my diet, because I had not had that information as yet. So after my operation, it was a year later, I was lucky enough to then conceive my first child, which is my son, who's now 9 years old.
So right after your surgery, did the doctor tell you how you would be living with this condition? At that point, you found out, I have this condition. Did they explain to you how you have to live with it? What are the consequences of it? And how did it make you feel emotionally at that point? Were you scared that you weren't going to be able to conceive?
Yeah, I think luckily for me at that point, the doctor was more like, look, I think you can have children, but if you want to have more than one child, you need to go 1, 2, 3, literally have them one after the other, because this could be your only gap to have a child. So he had more of that energy, but he at least gave me the hope that I could have a child. But when I had seen different kind of doctors, it was like, oh, you have endometriosis, it's unlikely for you to have a child. So the stigma around it was, and even when I speak to people now, is that they feel you're automatically infertile, that you can't have children. So there is a big stigma on that, and that's one of the things that I do want to break.
So how did you start managing that emotional side of dealing with your condition?
I think it is a mental thing. And I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God. So I'm kind of like, it happened. So mentally, I told myself I'm going to, and I know it sounds really blasé, but it was like, no, you can't. It's not, in a sense, it's not in their hands. It's not even in my hands. I have to leave it to that. So I had a really positive, at that point, positive energy. I did think it would be a long journey. And there were some points that I was like, oh my God, is this going to happen? Is it not? So mentally, it was very draining. And as you know, when you get to a certain age, people are asking, oh, are you having kids? And then that adds more pressure onto you. And brings it more to a thing and an attention. So yeah, it was up and down for me. So I tried to keep a positive upbeat, but sometimes I was, you peel on a stick each month and you're like, oh, not this month. And that is heartbreaking for that period. And then you got to pick yourself up again and be like, right, it's gonna happen, and try your hardest to try and keep a positive outlook on it. And it mentally, that really does help. That energy really does help.
And up until that point, apart from the pains and the issue with the fertility, had you any information about whether it was going to affect any other part of your life?
Yeah, it just like physically, they always said it would. So every now and again, and I am physically lethargic in a sense. So I'm constantly having to battle that. There's some months that I wake up and I'm extremely exhausted, and I go and get a blood test because I'm like, let me check it's not iron lacking and things like that. So I think it takes a physical toll on your whole body, and it feels draining. So sometimes you can't even explain why you're tired or why you're this. You could get the best night's sleep and just wake up. So it's just adapting with that. So they always told me to manage my lifestyle to suit that. And the other thing is stress, which my doctor did say, my first doctor, he was like, stress is a big factor. And I noticed that when my stress levels were high with regards to personal or work, I noticed the toll on my body, which was good because I was able to identify, okay, that's the problem. So I need to now take a breather back, go get a massage, take a trip up away, a holiday from work, and just kind of recuperate my body and bring it back. So again, once you can kind of try your best. You can't stop what's happening in life. Um, things happen all the time at work. So you just have to learn to manage it as best as possible.
Yes, and a lot of the episodes that I've done, these two themes keep recurring, which is stress being the main cause of so many conditions, whether they're chronic or not. Unfortunately, it's an epidemic of this, this life that we lead. And the second point, which is to me is something that I really love talking about and learning for myself. And then whatever I learn, I also like to spread that knowledge and discuss it with everyone around me, which is self-awareness. Listening to your body, understanding your energy, and learning when to say no, learning when to take a break for yourself. So whatever it is, even if you don't suffer from any chronic conditions and you lead a relatively healthy life, self-awareness is step number one to continue to ensure that you are healthy, that you are on the right track with things, right? Because life can have its ups and downs in general, whether you have a health condition or not. And I think everything starts from there, self-awareness. And you seem to be the kind of person to be quite self-aware. And sometimes it's hard for some people to know where to start and how to become self-aware in a way that's important or that's relevant for them to be able to take care of matters into their own hands. So we talked about these emotional and mental and physical aspects, that how you were impacted by this condition on all these levels in your life. Can you explain to us, or can you tell us how it is that you went from taking medication? Did you say you started taking medication to turning into a holistic approach? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so after my first son, it gives you a break, gives your body a break. When you're pregnant, it's the best time with endometriosis because everything just stops. All the side effects, all the pain. So as much as you're having morning sickness and stuff like that, during that process and when you're breastfeeding, it's like, oh, I've had a break. However, afterwards, sometimes it can come back in such an abundance once your body actually gets back to function, that it can hit you quite hard. And it did with my son. So I ended up going to a doctor. I was in London at the time with my son. We had moved to Manchester. So now I'm visiting a new doctor, but again, I've specifically looked for one that understands endometriosis. So he was a specialist. And again, I had a scan with him just to see where my body was at, because that's the only way you can tell. You have to have a scan. No one can tell from the outside or from your condition, symptoms. You have to look in the inside. So when I went to see this doctor took me to another level, and we talked about how high endometriosis is in Black women or women of ethnic minority from his research. And he explained that diet was the big factor. So sugar and salt. And obviously, we use a lot of seasonings in our food. So that has a lot of high intake of salt. And I naturally have a sweet tooth. So sugar was another fact, and wheat and gluten. So my dietary then started ticking down of what I could eat. My body at that point, I needed another surgery. It had gone from good to extremely bad within a space of 2 years. So I needed another surgery. But after, again, I had my surgery with him. It was keyhole, luckily. Some people have to have major surgery. So I was lucky, again, to catch it in time to have keyhole surgery. But after I had that surgery, it's like it starts again, your body starts again. And that's when I changed my complete diet. I took out bread. I still ate pasta and rice, but very small portions. And I went with gluten-free, which was hard to get at the time. And it's not as good as it tastes now back then. So I took away the gluten-free. I limited the best I could with sugar. Like, I drink a lot of tea. So I took it completely out my tea. And limited my juice or watered it down as significantly as possible. And it made a huge difference in my whole energy. It changed my energy for wanting to do more things. I wasn't as tired as I once was, and just physically took a much better impact on my body.
Yes, I've heard this story many times, that especially with sugar, that when people stop it or reduce it massively in their diet, it makes big changes in their lives.
The doctor had said that the endometriosis is like they feed on sugar. So sometimes when you're craving it, it's not you craving it, it's the actual endometriosis or what's going on in your body. Like you said, it's very related to other things, and the more sometimes you're craving and it has a knock-on effect.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's not easy to start this kind of lifestyle change with the diet, but when you do, and it takes for different people different times, but let's say an average of 1 week, 2 weeks, you're going to start seeing massive differences in your body, in your lifestyle, in your energy, the way you sleep. And that is without a chronic condition. So I can only imagine for you the impact that it had on you. Now, the question is, was that doctor a conventional doctor that you went to and who gave you this advice?
He still recommended, because what they do as well, all doctors I've seen, is recommend for you to go on like hormonal pills.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout my whole time, I tried it once. I tried an injection probably shortly after my son, and I had one injection and it made me feel so depressed. So I didn't want to get out of bed. And it was an injection I was supposed to have like quarterly, every 3 months. And I just had the one, and it took about 6 months to come out my system. I knew once I had taken it and how it made me feel, it was just not for me. And this is to stop the endometriosis expanding. And then I knew I had to find another route. But all doctors try and prescribe you to go down that route of having this hormonal pill. And that's why I changed my diet as well. So yeah, he was that still way inclined, but he gave me kind of more maybe it's his interest or personal interest of his research. He's like, look, this is the medical way, but this is what he considered, is a great approach and that I should try. So I went on, and because I'm a person who likes to try the natural way of doing things and not the medical way, it was perfect for me.
And did you have to follow a specific diet on your own after doing some research, or did you go to a nutritionist? Did you continue following up with your doctor? How did you manage that?
I did it all on my own, and I did some research, and I obviously back home, I'm originally Caribbean based. My grandparents are Jamaican and Grenadian. So I went kind of old school and so I did a bit of research back at home with diets and managing, because they don't have the medication we do. So how do they manage things at home? So I kind of went back home and did research, but it's all by myself. I didn't see a nutritionist. And when you're taking away stuff, it's a bit easier. Then if you're creating a whole new diet, like I still ate what I normally eat. I generally eat healthy. I eat a lot of veg, a lot of fruits. So it was just making sure, like I said, the wheat, the pastas, and the salt intake was reduced.
And how long after you started doing these dietary changes that you started seeing change in your body with the symptoms and with your condition?
I would say it took about 6 months for me to really, it could have been before, but that's when I noticed. I was like, oh, actually, it's not as bad. And the other thing was as well, my monthly menstrual reduced. I'd always been in 7 days, really, really heavy flow. But my days got less, and the flow got lighter. So it gave me an indication that it's having an impact.
Interesting. And the pain continued to be the same, or was it?
No, the pain reduced as well. The pain reduced probably in 3 months. It started to reduce, and I was wanting to go more to the gym, because I had taken on going to the gym, but I actually wanted to. Whereas before it was a bit of a struggle. I was like, oh, because I was so tired, I don't have the time. But I had more energy, so I wanted to explore that.
So isn't it funny, right, that when you fix one thing in the cycle of your personal life, you fix one thing, everything else starts to fall into place. You sleep better, you have more energy, and it's just that was the key for you. It was just changing your diet. You did that, and then everything else started going in a better direction than it was before.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you had your second baby after this, right? How was your experience conceiving your first child before you did these changes versus conceiving your second child and the pregnancy and the after the pregnancy?
So when we decided that we wanted a second child, we were ready. We had a lot of change. My stress levels rose. We had moved house. We then were deciding to move to Dubai. With that big change, there was a lot of change happening, a lot of mental and physical adapting. So when I actually got to Dubai, it had taken a massive toll on my body. Even though it was at happy times, it wasn't a unhappy time. It was a happy experiences, but just all that emotional change had impacted my body. So when I had got here, again, I had researched a doctor that specialized in this, just to check what my body status was at that point to try for a child. Because we had been trying and nothing was working. So I thought, let me have a look. And then when I saw the doctor, this was in Dubai now, he said, oh, it looks really, there's a lot going on. I'm not sure how good this is going to work for you. I think you should see an IVF doctor. And I was like, okay. This was new. This has never been suggested to me up to this point. So I met with an IVF doctor, but in my head I was thinking, this is not the route I think I'm going to take. Just my personal choice. So when I saw the IVF doctor, it was like a week difference. I saw the doctor, I saw the IVF doctor, and then I did another scan, and he was like, "Oh, this is not going to happen for you. I think you need to have IVF." So I was again, in my mental state, I thought, I think, again, because I'm very spiritual, I was like, you can't tell me that it's not naturally going to happen. You're like, it's just not in your control. So I think I went into it with that energy. So I saw him and he said, it's not going to happen. You need to have IVF. I think you should freeze your eggs. He was giving me a whole plan. And I said, okay. I literally left. And 2 days later, bear in mind, I've had 2 scans. 2 days later, I started having sickness. I was like, oh, did a pregnancy test and I was pregnant. So I had
Wow.
seen 2 scans, 2 doctors that had told me I need IVF, and then I was pregnant. So this was like, it was a shock to us. And obviously we were like, I was like, see, no one can really be that definite that it's not naturally going to happen. Unfortunately, it was a loss, that child. It was a loss. So every time I've had a pregnancy, this is another bit that is quite crucial. My first doctor said, as soon as I get pregnant, I have to have aspirin. And the aspirin actually thins your blood, so it helps the flow when the egg is traveling through. So the minute you find out you're pregnant, you're supposed to take that for the first trimester, the lowest dose. Now, this is something, please check with your doctor. That is the only medication that I did take, was the aspirin, and I think it actually does work. And I've spoken to a couple of other parents that it actually did help to keep the egg attached during the first trimester and help your pregnancy stay. So I think, I'm not sure if that's why that pregnancy didn't stay, because by the time I had found out I was pregnant, I was 9 weeks and I hadn't taken the aspirin. Maybe you never really know when it comes to miscarriages. Yeah, so that pregnancy didn't work, but at least I knew I could naturally get pregnant. And then, I again immediately went back to ensuring my diet was correct. I was going to the gym and just worked on myself physically, mentally. A year later, I was pregnant again with my second daughter, naturally. And that was just from diet and good exercise and trying to keep a positive outlook on life.
That is beautiful. I also agree with you that the spiritual aspect of taking care of your health is very, very important in whatever shape or form that means for you as an individual. And you cannot disregard it, because you are not complete without that part of your being. So if you don't take care of it, obviously there will be something missing when you're looking at yourself as a whole. And this is why I like talking about holistic wellness, is because you don't just look at the symptoms. You didn't just take a pain killer to manage your period pain. You were looking at your life and at yourself overall. You changed your diet spiritually. You kept on feeding your soul with that positivity, with that faith, and the food took care of your body. And those two together then helped you with your mindset and your outlook, and then mentally you were able to manage your emotions. So this is what I gathered from what you told me, from your experience and your story. And this is exactly what I think, and I believe holistic wellness does, is that when you go see a doctor that looks at you not just from a symptoms perspective, they look at your history, they look at your diagnosis, they look at your lifestyle, what you do, and then you together can manage a health plan, and then you can start tackling things from a different way that will treat you as a whole. And I absolutely love that. And and you must be very, very proud for taking that route and managing it and taking responsibility in your own hands for your own health. And that is very important. And I really admire the fact that you are trying to spread awareness about not just the condition and your story, because it's also very brave to be vulnerable and share your story. And I really, really thank you for that. And it's important because, I mean, we can't rely on Google, right? And we can't rely on just it's very important for us to talk about it together as a community and create that awareness so that maybe one person knows somebody or they themselves are going through something similar, and you never know what they can take back from this. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. I think the biggest thing when I meet a lot of I don't meet a lot, but when I meet people that have endometriosis or their symptoms, there are different things that it's attached to, but definitely going to see a specialist in the field, specialist gynecologist at least, not your GP. Your GP will have no idea, even if it is fibroids or any of the other symptoms that us women suffer with. And the mental mindset, which is the hardest part, but it's really staying positive and trying different avenues. It definitely is down to the individual. And it's not easy, as much as it might sound easy. It's not. I have good days, good months, bad months. There's months where I junk out on, syrup, cake, and custard. But I feel it in my body the next month. It has a toll. So it makes me recline. It's not easy, and it's something that, I have to live with for the rest of my life and manage it for the rest of my life. But I try and stay positive, and I do want to share it because doctors' first thing is take this medication, or, sometimes we have to take away an ovary, or we have to take away a tube, and I'm trying to prevent that, or a full hysterectomy. Is they're extreme, and I was adamant that that wasn't going to happen for me. And I think when you have that attitude, no, give me another option or try yourself, is the best route.
Yeah, absolutely. And how was your support system throughout that entire journey? Who was your support system?
My mum, my husband, he's been amazing through this, in a sense of he's seen me in my most vulnerable state, and he's had to manage it the best way he could and support the best way. And my mum's always researching, have you seen this? Or this is good for your condition. So my mum definitely. It's hard with work because they don't understand. So I now work for myself, but at the time when I was in employment, and obviously no one wants to hear a woman, oh, you're having a bad month this month. There was points where I had to take time off work, so it was taking a toll. So it's hard at work to get anybody to understand, obviously, other than if you work with someone very closely that is a woman that understands. But yeah, my family have definitely, my sister who's had to have my son when I've had my surgery. So yeah, my family's definitely been my support and to keep going. And I think we all have a holistic approach to life and natural way of, getting over a cold, and things like that. So it really does help that it's around me. So it was an easier decision or transition to go into.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. For anyone watching or listening who may be going through a similar condition, endometriosis, or something resonated with them from what they heard from your story, do you have any practical advice that you would offer them and to help them in their own journey towards healing and well-being and managing this condition?
The first and foremost is to probably identify what your stress level, like avenue is around you, like what's going on around you. Identify that. Because sometimes some things are fixable and changeable, because as we said initially, stress is the biggest factor most of the time on your body, and what is prioritizing what is important and what isn't. Sometimes I need to stop doing that because it's having a major impact on my life, and it's not helping me, or I need to distance myself. So it's probably identifying what your stress levels are first and eliminating as best as possible. The second is then looking at your diet, looking at what I'm eating, at least identify, okay, I'm having too much coffee, or I'm having too much tea, or I'm having too much, I'm not having enough vegetables in my diet, or at least analyze what you're having first. So if you start with yourself, and then the next best thing is, obviously, if you're feeling any way, definitely we cannot eliminate doctors, and definitely go and get a scan and find out what's going on. Find out what's going on in your body, because that's the only way you're going to know how to tackle it and what to tackle. Because what might work for me might not work with someone who has fibroids, but they may have to adapt certain things for them. So definitely check what's going on. Check your mental well-being and your diet. But take time for yourself. That's my biggest thing, and it's the hardest thing as a woman. It's the hardest thing as a mother. It's even worse, because your pecking order of thinking of yourself just gets lower and lower down the list. And every so often you have to just stop and say, nope, I just need time for myself. One tip I will say that really helped me was writing things down. So I went for a stage, I'm not as good as now, but I went for a stage of having a diary, because I found as I wrote it down, it made me compromise what is actually happening. And then I was able to read it back, or even just writing it. And it's like saying it out loud. You're hearing what's going on in your life, and it allows you to, take it in and not just go with the flow. Because sometimes you just get caught up with life, and you really need to take a minute for yourself.
It's just amazing. We were talking about the parallels in the beginning, when it's related to stress and specific conditions that people can develop because of it, and self-awareness. And then again, this other parallel of self-reflection, journaling as being one of the tools that you used yourself in your specific journey for this specific condition, but then this being a tool that can help anybody that's going through anything. And whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, whether it's spiritual, I think on all those levels. And it's just amazing to me when every time I talk to anyone about any condition, and regardless of the way they managed it or cured it, there's always these parallels. There's most of the time stress and the environment being, the way you eat and what you expose yourself to, and so many different ways. So the stress, your environment, and how that affects you, maybe that being the cause of you developing the condition, or maybe making it worse or not getting better. And it always comes down to that. And I think that the more we keep talking about it, the more we're going to just remind people again and again that, just like they say when you go on a plane, put your mask on in case of an emergency before you help somebody else. So don't forget to reach out and put that mask on, because you cannot help someone else if you need help yourself. If you're not able, you're not capable, you don't have the means, then you're not going to be able to help somebody else. And it always boils down to that. And I am very thankful to you for these reminders. And I really hope that at least if it helps one person, whether who is listening or watching, even if they're going through a bad day, or even if they're going through a condition similar to yours or different than yours, I really hope that this conversation we just had, and you being brave enough to share your story with us, and this advice will help them in any shape or form. So thank you once again.
Well, thank you for having me on. And I'm happy for you to share my contact, my email, if anyone wants to reach out. And but thank you. And I think this platform's amazing and really will help so many women. Just look at themselves in a different light, or look at how to help themselves. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. We hope you found it insightful and you enjoyed it as much as we did creating it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's continue creating this amazing community of holistic wellness seekers and practitioners together. See you in the next one.